Lucas Owen, welcome to the Biohacking Secrets Show.
Anthony, what's going on, man?
Not much, brother. Not much. Just got back from a nice little walk. I'm excited to talk about nootropics, brain-targeted nutrients, testosterone, sleep hacks, icing the testicles, all sorts of fun stuff. We got a good one today.
Same here, man. I'm pumped to be here, and I just want to, maybe let your listeners know that like we have been, friends for a number of years now. Like we connected. How many years ago? It would have been like at least 4 or 5 years back, right?
I feel like it was like 2016, 2017, but it's all a blur.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, nice, man. Well, I mean, for our listeners who aren't familiar with your work and what you do over at ergogenic.health, maybe you could give us a bit of your origin story and background.
Yeah, sure. So my journey really started out as a professional soccer player. I was always looking for different ways to improve my performance on the soccer field. And that's when I sort of discovered the whole realm and the whole world of nootropics. And I started experimenting with a range of different compounds, and I fell in love with one in particular, which I'm sure you know of, and I'm sure your listeners know of, is L-theanine. I noticed that was making me feel like more calm, and it improved my ability to read the play. And then from there, I just fell in love with the whole idea of being able to hack your physiology and modulate neurochemistry and alter hormones and things like that. And then basically transitioned from playing soccer into my naturopathy degree, which I completed, 4 years of study full time, completed a naturopathy degree. And then from there, I sort of got involved in like a nootropic startup. So I had the opportunity to formulate a nootropic stack. I was using some cutting edge ingredients there. And then basically from there, I then decided, all right, it's about time I launched my own platform and showcase my knowledge. And that's when I, started my Instagram profile, which is just full of just golden health hacks and tips and things like that. And then it just sort of snowballed from there. Website, podcast, YouTube channel, and yeah, I love what I do.
Awesome, bro. And your Instagram is Ergogenic Health, ERGOGENICHEALTH, correct?
Yep.
All right, nice. So guys, check that out. L-theanine is phenomenal. I've been on that stuff for a while too, and noticed something similar where when I dug into the research, where I was even more intrigued, like what's going on here? And then you start realizing it almost has an effect that would be created physiologically in the body if you meditated more. It's increasing these alpha and theta brainwaves that are responsible for being in that relaxed, focused flow state. And it's pretty powerful stuff, especially if you also meditate and engage in some of those mindfulness practices. I want to talk too about so you had there's a nootropic. I think you talked about it with Ben Greenfield, that in some ways, I believe it's a dopaminergic compound that has some similarities to the plant medicine ayahuasca, but it is different. And maybe you could talk about that a little bit, just because I think it's relevant. And one of my clients that's in Costa Rica right now, he'd ordered a bunch of it, and he was like, I'll just continue with more questions so you could touch on this. He was like, okay, he's like, so I'm reading stuff on forums about people shouldn't be taking this in the sun, and you could have certain reactions and this and that. And he's like, so, I mean, should I do it or should I not? I live in Costa Rica. I'm not going to get out of the sun. You know what I mean? So I told him, I was like, well, I'm talking with Lucas tomorrow, so maybe that's a question that would be better for him to field. So maybe you can kind of speak on that compound, what similarities it has to ayahuasca as a dopaminergic substance, and whether or not you can take it if you live in Costa Rica, sunny places like that.
Yeah, for sure. So the compound we're referring to is 9-MBC, so 9-methyl-beta-carboline. Now, within the ayahuasca brew, obviously we understand that there are many different compounds that, elicit psychoactive effects. Now, these beta-carbolines, one of which is this 9-MBC, it's a derivative. Technically, it is a beta-carboline. And when the researchers identified 9-MBC, they were looking into how it could basically be protective for Parkinson's disease. And if you look at some of the initial rat studies, there was an incredible ability for it to regenerate, repair, and restore dopaminergic neurons and even protect against dopamine neuron cell death. And then I sort of dove into the research even further and looked into its other mechanisms of action, realized that it could upregulate GDNF, so glial-derived neurotrophic factor, increase nerve growth factor, BDNF, and it basically turned out to be this wonder molecule that could help to reverse dopaminergic cell damage. And or for me, I was looking at it like, okay, this could be a compound that could be highly beneficial for individuals that have completely abused their dopaminergic axis, their dopaminergic system with the use of Ritalin, Adderall, stimulants, maybe even illicit drugs.
Screens all day.
Exactly. So then I was looking into vendors to manufacture it and who was actually synthesizing it. And there was only one company at the time, of which now, unfortunately, they have been taken down by the FDA.
That's weird because they're looking out for us.
So
it must have been dangerous. Laying the sarcasm on pretty thick, guys, for those of you that take vaccine.
Exactly. And then from there, really, we had some early beta testers and some psychonauts who were just all right, let's administer this compound at a very low dose, between 10 to 20 milligrams orally. So it was bioavailable orally. And then some of the initial reports were quite overwhelming, in terms of how people were responding, and also just the initial subjective logs that people were reporting online. And then from there, basically, it just became I guess known as something that people could leverage, maybe not use definitely not a chronically, we can't use it chronically because of the safety profile. Again, this has not been studied in humans. So obviously, it is quite risky, but it did look quite promising in the rat studies. And then, as you mentioned, the concern of DNA damage, particularly from sunlight exposure. I personally, my impression here is that I think that risk is overblown, because there are many other supplements and herbs that can also have that deleterious effect. For example, both you and I know St. John's wort, that has that side effect. But what percentage of people actually, they might have a bit more sun sensitivity, but then it's well, if you've got good antioxidant status in the body, it shouldn't really be a big issue.
And it's an issue with a ton of acne medications that, I hope our listeners aren't taking, but that a lot of people take and have very little problem. When I was going through, the change of adolescence, I broke out a little bit. I tried some of that stuff, and I remember being don't go in the sun with this, and of course I did. I was a teenager, you know what I mean? So, and no problem. No.
Yeah, that's definitely. Obviously, we got to factor that in as well. But in terms of the initial reports, what people were saying about the compound, and then also linking up all of the research, and even still, I would assume that maybe in 2022 there'll be a few more studies coming out. But a lot of the other beta carbolines are actually neurotoxic, but this one here displayed neuroprotective qualities. So it's interesting to see that just how it's sort of working. And yeah, it's, to me, I look at it, I don't view it as, again, something that you'd want to be using every day, something like theanine, which has a super strong safety profile, and or L-carnitine and things like that.
Yeah.
But it has been a tool, just like all of these biohacks that we talk about. It's just yet another tool that may be, deployed under certain situations.
Sure. Is it something that you take or cycle in periodically, or not so much anymore?
I actually came up with a catchphrase, or sort of a motto. It was 9 NBC Sundays.
Okay.
But this is not for me personally, but I would imagine this would be for people who have maybe gone out on the Friday or Saturday night and gone on a bender. Maybe they need some sort of recovery protocol for the Sunday, not to feel completely smashed or hungover. Then I think that could be a potential application. Maybe dosing on the Sunday, Monday, and then backing off, because I think it's very potent. And if you actually ingest it, you will see how intensely bitter it is. So, and You've done ayahuasca like many times, right?
Yeah.
Like
At least 8 times.
And the actual, I've never done it personally, but like the flavor profile of the drink.
Nauseating.
Yeah. Well, this 9-MBC, like it's so strong, Anthony. Like it's really intense, like really bitter. Even a really small amount, like is just super strong. But yeah, I mean, like 9-MBC is one of many. Like like I don't. I see it as useful under certain situations, but again, I'd actually lean towards some other, like if we're trying to optimize for like dopamine and energy, motivation, mood, like there are other nootropics out there as well, which, we can sort of discuss.
Cool. Yeah. There's two things I want to bring up as well that because my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2015. I've had on John Gray, who created the books on Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and that whole series. He had Parkinson's and is one of the few people that was able to completely get rid of all of his symptoms and overcome it. And he was the one that brought my attention to. And look, I'm not making this as a recommendation. I'm just sharing, part of the conversation that John and I had. He's like, get your dad off of the meds. He goes, they're part of the problem. And as long as he's on those, he's going to most likely continue to deteriorate. And so we started really shining a light on, okay, how much was he taking? What happened after those doses? And realized, yeah, he's right. This stuff is like poison, essentially. And we've been working at getting him completely off of it. We're very close right now. But from our observation and from what John has shared, like, anyone that you love and care about, I highly encourage that, that may be dealing with Parkinson's. I highly encourage them to listen to that episode I did with John Gray and really work with someone, because most neurologists are not well versed in this. And like, we've changed neurologists so that like we have access to like MRIs and that sort of thing as part of my dad's treatment when necessary. And they all want to just put him back on high doses of this stuff. And we're like, does anyone even pay attention to what's going on in the medical field in this space? Or is it just like the big guys upstairs tell us to do this, so we do this? It's like, when did we stop thinking and applying logic and, critical analyses of how patients respond to stuff? It's like, or do we just say, oh no, you get Parkinson's and you get worse? Well, why? Maybe it's what we're doing. Anyway, that's just a side note that's close to my heart. And again, that's not my advice. I'm not a doctor. I don't tell people to get off medication or anything like that. I encourage you guys to take control of your health. So I wanted to just mention that as part of, because it is a piece, if you're just constantly trying to biohack your dopamine centers and you're also taking something that may be making the condition worse, you're going to be kind of swimming upstream the entire time.
For sure. I assume you're talking about like the L-Dopa?
Carbidopa, levodopa. So like the synthetic stuff, like Mucuna as a source of dopamine seems to be pretty well tolerated and even beneficial. But when you get into the patented / patentable synthetic versions, carbidopa, levodopa, that's where we start seeing some of the problems that John Gray talked about and that, my dad experienced firsthand,
Yeah. With the Mucuna, I actually remember seeing a really interesting study is that like they actually deliberately removed the L-Dopa in Mucuna and administered it to Parkinson's mice, and it still had a neuroprotective effect and improved the motor symptoms of Parkinson's even by removing the L-Dopa. So it just goes to show like the herb, the full
for sure. I mean, we kind of knew the protocol was in part, we have a combination of a few different things. I won't go into all the detail, but we're utilizing Mucuna, we're utilizing 5-HTP, L-theanine, Biclin with skullcap extract, and some other things. And basically, I knew I needed help because in order to like strategically get him off of his doses and then supplement that with the appropriate doses of the natural stuff, I was like, there's too many moving pieces based on my level of expertise here. So I found someone good and brought her in to help with that. And then, you just got to keep a keen eye because she's like, okay, we need to also have a neurologist. Because I basically like, my dad's a neurologist. We were in there and he was pushing the jabba dabba ding dong on him. And I'm like, look, we're good on that, dude. And 2 or 3 times he tried. I'm like, stop bringing it up, And I'm like, that has killed more people than any other jabba dabba ding dong combined in the past 20 years. He's like, I haven't seen that. I'm like, do you read at all? Do you go online and you dig around a bit? I'm like, it's all over the place. I'm like, I know multiple people who've had loved ones pass after getting it, And he was like, I don't think that's true. And I was like, well, you can talk to my friend who just lost his grandpa. And within 24 hours of it, let him know that you think that he's full of BS, And I was like, have a good day, dude. So we left. We had to get a new neurologist because just in case we needed like MRIs and stuff. And then we get a new one, and they're trying to put my dad back on all the same stuff. Like, you got to really keep your head on a swivel, like you're in a cockfight these days. All right. So let's talk about some of those other nootropics and compounds that you're excited about. Which ones you take fairly consistently, which ones you like cycling in. And I want to mention this, you've got a nootropics masterclass, you've got a testosterone masterclass. We got a discount set up for all of our listeners, but those can be found at ergogenic.health. We'll have discount code biohacks, and we'll link to them in the show notes too. But I know some of you guys are working out, some of you are driving. So if you just go to ergogenic.health and enter discount code biohacks, you can get them that way. Or again, we'll have the links worked into the show notes. But yeah, let's kind of do a deep dive on nootropics and share some nuggets.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say my next favorite one really is actually a derivative of vitamin B1. It's called TTFD, which I also mentioned on Ben Greenfield's show, but that's been an absolute game changer for a number of conditions, and also just for general, like, that dopaminergic push that maybe you might get from, let's say, tyrosine or some other dopamine precursors.
Is this like solbutamine, or is it different than solbutamine?
It's like a different form of B1. There's like solbutamine, and it's like L-thiamine, and this sort of like TTFD. I've used all different types of B1, but this like TTFD is by far the most like subjectively noticeable version of B1. And like, it's one that a lot of people. Yeah, I'll have to. I mean, I just did a post on Instagram to talk about it. Like, coffee. I describe it as like this: like, B1 can fix fatigue, coffee can mask fatigue. Right. The reason I say that is because like this particular form actually helps the brain to utilize glucose as a energy substrate, and it's very, very potent at doing that, because it's like the rate limiting step in that Krebs cycle to actually start the process of converting, food into energy, really.
Yeah. Interesting. Like I noticed a difference when I first started taking benfotiamine, which is a little bit, more on the mitochondrial side. And, it's quote unquote synthetic, a form of B1, but, I noticed the big difference with that. Honestly, I didn't notice too much from solbutamine, but I've got to try this TTFT.
D.
All right. My bad. Health.
Yeah, I do have a vendor that goes to US and also for the Australian audience as well. So that's linked on there.
And then what dosages and timing do you like for that?
Yeah, so this is where you got to be pretty careful, because it depends on your other B vitamin status. So like if you're deficient in B2, then you're going to get an adverse effect, or even if you're deficient in like manganese, things like that. So starting as low as possible, I always recommend about 25 milligrams orally in the morning with food. Yeah, if you do it on an empty stomach, you're probably going to run into hypoglycemia pretty quickly, because it does lower blood sugar pretty powerfully.
No kidding. What about people that are on like an intermittent fasting nutritional template?
In this situation, maybe
could you take it with your first meal? If you eat at like 11 a.m. or noon or something like that, like could you take it?
Then I'd dose it. Yeah, I'd still dose it around 11, 12 with your first meal. Should be fine. If you do dose it like too close to bed, it will absolutely destroy. I've tested it that many times. Like if you do it after 6 p.m., like my Oura Ring scores, like it's terrible. You would just have so many nighttime awakenings.
Interesting. All right, that's very cool. All right, I'm gonna have to try that. So you're 1 for 1 on nootropics that I need to try. What else do you like?
The other one is one that's like personally, it really changed my life. This was a number of years ago when I was studying. I was looking for something that would help with like task initiation, like the ability to like just stop being stuck in your own head and just like actually do shit and like take action.
A procrastination pill?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's called uridine monophosphate. Like that ingredient there for me and for a number of friends that I've told about all say the same thing. Like uridine just makes you want to get shit done, and it does it like in such a clean and sustainable way. It's very balanced. There's no crash. It improves like verbal fluency. It just makes you feel like it removes cobwebs in your brain, basically.
That's good stuff. It's like an ingredient in mother's milk.
Yeah, it's in breast milk. Yeah.
So for those of you who don't have access to fresh breast milk, you can always take uridine.
Oh, it's funny. One of my friends on Instagram recently was actually experimenting with human breast milk. So
Really?
The other week, yeah.
Anything?
I think he just acted very weird after it. I'm not sure if he was putting it on for the kid.
Weird if you're drinking breast milk as an adult. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of uridine, and even like tau, the triacetyl uridine. I like both of those, and I feel like they have different effects, at least for me. What dosage and timing do you like for the uridine?
So what I found with uridine is like, in terms of like the dose response curve, very high doses would induce sleep. And I tried this numerous times and I looked into the literature. Anything above like, I would say 600 milligrams will induce sleep, but anything less than 150 milligrams would definitely give you the stimulating, energizing effects. So like that lower dose is more stimulating. And it also stacks really, really well with plenty of DHA and EPA. So there's strong synergy there with the DHA, EPA, and then also combining it with plenty of B vitamins because it can, actually use up B6, B9, and B12.
For sure. Have you done genetic testing and like looked at your methylation, the MTHFR status or anything like that?
I have. Yeah. My MTHFR, I don't have any of the severe ones. Like I don't have any real major issue converting folic acid to methylfolate. And I also verified that by actually trying methylfolate, and I realized like within a day or two, it was like overmethylation started getting the symptoms. So I was like, all right, I actually don't need to take it.
Yeah. No, interesting. Okay, cool. Because that was a huge one for me, was realizing that I did have some of those genetic variations. And like when I started taking bioactive versions of like riboflavin 5-phosphate and, the benfotiamines and the pyridoxal 5-phosphate is B6 and, the methylated B12s and folic acid and, that sort of thing. For me, I was like, wow, this makes such a big difference, and I couldn't even believe that I went so long without them. I was like, I just needed more B vitamins. That's it. And like all of a sudden you're detoxing better, your brain's working better, you're more energized. It's wild, So I mentioned that just so people can have that on their radar if these are things that they're experiencing where they're experiencing fatigue or cognitive fluctuations, that sort of thing. Also kind of funny, I meant to mention this earlier while we were talking about B1, but a fun little fact that my uncle told me was you can take regular B1 like as thiamine, and it actually repels mosquitoes. It's like a natural internal mosquito repellent, and it legit works. Now, I have not found the same to be true with benfotiamine or sulbutamine, and I'm guessing I won't find the same to be true with TTFD. But that's just a little fun fact for people that live in areas with a lot of mosquitoes, or if Willie Gates decides to start sending out a whole bunch of GMO mosquitoes, you might want to up your thiamine. Just a heads up. The thing about uridine too is it's quite expensive. Like you can usually get it for a decent price, but at least like we've got that brain performance fuel that I was telling you about, and the dosages that I was looking to put in there, I was like, I couldn't believe how expensive they were as a raw ingredient for somewhat modest doses. In that like 100 to 250 milligram range. I was like, I got to really like hit the minimum effective dose with the uridine, or else I'm just going to be paying out the wazoo for this thing.
You might as well be using breast milk at that price.
I know. Maybe that's what we'll do. Then we don't have to run into any of the potential supply chain issues of having a supplement. We'll just get like breast milk from unjabbed Mormon women and sell that. Your buddy's contact info. I'd like to reach out to him. I'd like to get our first customer, maybe. What else do you like on the nootropic side?
So the next one, so we've gone through Thiamax, Uridine. I'd say like the next one is probably has the coolest name for a nootropic. Is called Bromantane. So like Bromantane was super interesting when I first researched it. I was looking at like the category of like adaptogens, right? And then both you and I know lots about adaptogenic herbs and how they work and things like that.
Like the ashwagandha, rhodiola, shilajit, schizandra, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, ginseng. So like then I was like, all right, so like what else can act as an adaptogen or similar? And then I came across this category called actoprotectors. And these actoprotectors, if you search it on PubMed, you'll see a list of articles looking at like, and there's even other herbs that act as these actoprotectors. One of them is called Aralia. But looking at Bromantane, I came across an article that looked at the use of Bromantane in patients with neurasthenia. So like just general weakness and fatigue and debility and like how they feel post-surgery or just recovering from severe illness. So Bromantane caught my eye, and then I looked into its legal status, and then realized that it was banned by WADA, which means that maybe this actually has very potent anti-fatigue, energy stabilizing effects. Then I was like, okay, so it must be unsafe because WADA's banning it. And then I saw the research, and there were some actual human studies where they were using 50 milligrams of Bromantane orally, and like there was a greater than 80% improvement in symptoms across all the participants, and a lot of the benefits were still remaining months after finishing dosing, which means that it's using it like transiently, which is, again, you don't want to be like reliant on something long term for energy. And then I was like, okay, so like what is it actually doing? And I looked into the research and realized that it was actually upregulating that tyrosine hydroxylase enzyme to convert the tyrosine into L-DOPA, and also the amino acid decarboxylase downstream to then push more L-DOPA to dopamine. So I was like, well, this sounds amazing. And it's doing it, it's upregulating the mRNA expression of this gene, basically. And I was like, this is cool. This is really cool. So I ended up ordering some, and this was a long time ago. And I took some before going to the library. I had to do some studying that day, and I took some. And 4 hours after dosing, I'm like, I literally feel like it was a placebo. I actually don't notice anything at all. But then like it would hit like the 5 to 6 hour mark, and I was like, I think I feel something now. Like I'm feeling like a bit of an energy boost, a bit of a bump in mental clarity. And then I actually did a workout that evening, and it was by far the most euphoric and best workout that I've ever done. And then what actually happened from there, for me subjectively, I think it actually induced like a period of like hypomania. So I was actually like, sleeping like 5 hours a night, feeling ridiculously focused, happy. If music was great, everything was good for like 3 to 4 days. And then eventually I returned back to baseline. I was actually pretty nervous because I was like, damn, have I just like triggered?
Changed my brain permanently?
Yeah, I was thinking that. I think I was like 21 years old when I first tried it. But then from there, like I then retried it again a number of weeks later, and it still had the same sort of effect. And again, a lot of people are noticing benefits like now, like today, using Bromantane.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And is it that you like?
Because I'm someone who's already like really sensitive, and if you combine it with like small dose uridine, man, like the uridine and Bromantane stack together, like you could get away with like 25 milligrams of Bromantane and still get enough energy, really.
Cool. So uridine somewhere in that like 50 to 150 range, and then the bromantine in like 25 to 50 milligrams.
Yeah, yeah.
Dope. I was curious. So, I mean, I don't know if you've read, but Arthur Firstenberg wrote a book called The Invisible Rainbow that has some great stuff in it, and like all books, some stuff that's not so great. But he talks a lot about that. I'm going to mispronounce it. What is it? Neurasthenia?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And how much that is a result of the electrification of Earth. And like the rollout of like, when we rolled out the power lines and then the radio waves and then, working our way up to radar and 5G and stuff like that. And I do think that we're at a point where a lot of people are essentially hacking their dopamine pathway, because many of those wireless electrical devices that are now ubiquitous in our society can cause a suppression of dopamine, right? And like almost like you hear about MDMA or like ecstasy or Molly, right? You take that and you dump serotonin, but it's almost like robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's like you get some of like tomorrow's serotonin today, but then there's a bit of a rebound effect, right? And it's sort of like that with wireless electricity and dopamine. It's almost like, and even serotonin to a certain degree, but so a lot of what we're doing is we're like, okay, how do we improve the status, the efficiency, the effectiveness of our dopamine pathways to compensate for a very unnatural environment, or at least, it's unnatural. It's nothing like the environment that our ancestors evolved in. But I do think that on a long enough timeline, you're going to have people that have kind of figured out how to maintain and preserve and even improve their dopamine pathways. And you're going to have the people that are just like glued to their screens and sort of addicted to getting dopamine from all the wrong places. And I cannot imagine a different outcome other than sort of this like bifurcation of society, where you've got some people that are just like super dialed in and have really mastered a lot of the switches and levers that are required to master your physical and mental performance, and then, or optimize your physical and mental performance. So I'm not saying master time and time again. And then you're going to have the people that are like eating the cud and staring at the box and chasing the short-term dopamine hits through porn and masturbation and stuff like that can just further erode your dopamine centers and your brain health long-term. At least that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. I'd love to be proven wrong by society, but
no, I definitely agree, man. I definitely agree. And like even in the basic things, like people that work in an office environment, like just sitting under fluorescent lights, like, man, like affecting cortisol, increasing depression, like just terrible. It's terrible. Like
For sure. Even this light that I use for the podcast to like light my face up, it's just like, it's so offensive. And you know what I mean? Like, I've got to get a better light that's more biocompatible. Anything else you want to share on like the nootropic side? We talked, or you at least wrote kind of like on some of the topics you wanted to discuss, cosmetic neurology. And I was like, what's this? I don't know.
Yeah,
is that a different word for something that I know, or is this something I've never heard of?
Well, it's a term that I really like to explore. I covered in more detail in the nootropics course, but it's basically like it's based around the principle that you can completely harness and hijack your neurotransmitters for a specific occasion. So, like the way I look at it is like this: let's say public speaking, for example. Okay. If we backtrack and reverse which neurotransmitters are directly responsible for reducing anxiety, improving verbal fluency, making them feel a bit more sharp and witty, okay, well then all we need to do is increase GABA, reduce glutamate, increase acetylcholine, increase dopamine, lower histamine, like increasing orexin. It's all about like being able to tinker and tweak these, like, I know it's very reductionist in the way that I'm sort of looking at it like this, but I think it's useful for like people that want to be high performers in everything they do. Like for me personally, if I took cordyceps like before a podcast like this, it would make me just too irritable / anxious. And so like I won't be able to like fully be able to articulate myself, and I'd be just too wrapped up in my head during the podcast.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, all right, so I know I've got a podcast with Anthony. I'm going to increase GABA. I'm going to reduce glutamate because I don't want to be overthinking during the podcast. That's like the cosmetic neurology. And then also as part of that is the premise of there's something called the snapback phenomenon, which is something that I've sort of discovered is like taking something to make you deliberately feel bad, like deliberately feeling not optimal, feeling like slowed down, not good, maybe for like 2 days, but then to have like a rebound effect on day 3 and for the subsequent next week to then feel freaking amazing, like just to feel, and that phenomenon there is like antagonizing specific receptors in the hope that it'll upregulate and give you a longer term benefit.
What would be an example of that? Like, I mean, like texting your ex, or are we talking about compounds that you ingest?
Oh my god, man! I really wish we went to university together. We would have had so much fun.
Oh, you didn't want to know me in university. I was like, I went for it. I had 4 years. I did a victory lap, so 4.5 years. It was a blast.
Jeez. Oh man. But so it was. So what are some of the compounds? So like,
what's one that stands out that like makes you feel like junk, but then has a beneficial effect after a couple of days?
It's cyproheptadine, which is also known as periactin. It's not a nootropic. It's actually the very first. It's a first generation antihistamine, and also it's used to treat serotonin syndrome. And so, like, subjectively, that drug, which I've now used maybe 150 times in my life, talking about it as if I'm like a professional.
Doing this, you're a professional.
I guess put in a number of hours, probably over 10,000 by now. But yeah, with cyproheptadine, like, so that drug there will antagonize a bunch of receptors. It's not only like a serotonin blocker, it blocks histamine receptors, it blocks dopamine D2 receptors, it has dopamine D5 receptor blocking activity. And so you could imagine just how shit you would feel taking a drug like this, and even lowers acetylcholine. But what it does is like it also lowers cortisol. It lowers a bunch of like nasty stress hormones. Like it's like an immediate block. Let's stop the entire stress response. And it's like the emergency pill. It's nothing like benzodiazepine, like Valium or anything like that. I don't go anywhere near those. They are just like extremely dangerous. But like cyproheptadine, yeah, I mean, like it makes you freaking starving, like really, really hungry. It like blocks satiety. So like it just makes you want to eat, and it'll make you diabetic overnight. It'll make you, you got to be careful with it.
And that's prescription only?
It is, but it should be very easy to like get your hands on, because like it's an antihistamine drug. And so it's like, it's ubiquitous. Like it should be easy to source. It is for me at least.
And when you've taken it, 150 times, what dosage do you take?
Yeah, so this is critical, because when they prescribe it, they'll prescribe it in 4 milligram tablets. But if you take if you're an absolute noob, or like you've never used something like this before, and if you take 4 milligrams, it will wipe you off your feet completely. Like it will just make you drowsy, like really, really bad. So when I use it now, I'm only using about 1 to 2 milligrams. The last time I ever used 4 milligrams was a long time ago, the next day I woke up and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, what am I doing here? Like this, I'm deliberately taking something to give me a disadvantage, really.
Right. Okay, but then the bounce back is noticeable, perceivable.
Oh man, like I have repeated this experiment so many times to figure this out, that every time I do it, I'm like, it is worth it, because I don't know if it's just because of my weird neurochemistry, or like I've got some sort of defect in my neurotransmitter pathways, but it will always give me exactly what I'm looking for, but it will last for like even a week or even up to 2 weeks. So
that's pretty cool.
Short term, yeah.
I've never tried that. I'm going to reach out and see if I could give it a go. Sweet. This is awesome. Before we kind of transition into testosterone, a nice little segue, because I feel like both testosterone and the dopamine centers and the neurotransmitter, the neurochemicals of our brain play a big part in not sex drive, so libido, EQ, erection quality, arousal, that sort of thing, sexual performance, if you will. Have you found any nootropics that have a beneficial impact on that for like guys that are maybe like, I'm not feeling the same level of sex drive that I used to have. I don't have, that like, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? That the mojo, my mojo is suppressed, and maybe their erection quality isn't as good as it used to be.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, the one that I mentioned before, like that bromantane, there's even one study in rats that it increases, sexual receptivity in like male rats. So it just made them want to basically have sex more often. So increasing desire and mounting frequency.
There's a guy calculating how often the mice mount each other. What'd you do today, honey? You know what I do. What's for dinner?
Oh my God. That's too good. Oh my God. Yeah. So bromantane does have that effect, and it did have a positive effect on my own physiology. And again, a lot of people are also reporting the same effects from that. And so like that, it totally makes sense because it does lower prolactin. That it's another way to lower prolactin.
Interesting.
That, doesn't involve cabergoline or some of the.
I was going to say, I messed with cabergoline in the past, and like my dad got Parkinson's, and I was like, oh boy, I'm gonna try some caber, see how that goes. And I did notice that it shortened refractory periods and had some beneficial effects, but it's expensive as heck, and obviously comes with some other things that I would imagine bromantine may not.
Well, it's I was looking at other like dopamine D2 agonists, and another one you might be interested in. I got my hands on it, but I never actually took it because I was just like, I'm actually a little bit nervous to try this. It was metergoline, METE, like meter, METER, Goline, GOLINE. That's also a D2 agonist. It was used by in farm, like in big pharma, but then eventually it was like, I don't know why, but it just got pulled off the market. You'll have to, if you do some research on PubMed. There's one study in humans where they administered it for anxiety, I think, and it had a really outstanding efficacy. So like it helped it helped a huge percentage of the participants in the study. It was actually more than like with SSRIs, like they're so like the actual effect size of an SSRI is actually not that good.
No, they're terrible. I mean, I was put on Prozac at 19 and I spent a long time getting off that junk. And then there's even some evidence suggesting they maybe slipping some heavy metals in there too, along with along with whatever. I don't know. What's obvious? I don't know what I'm talking about. This is all just okay, cool. And so, does that also help with sexual performance?
The metergoline, there are some threads, like some reports of that also helping with that refractory period. Yeah.
Cool. You don't happen to know the dosage, do you?
Oh, it was really, really low. It was even, I think it was even less than 5 milligrams.
I'll check it out on PubMed and stuff just to be sure if I end up going that route. Maybe I won't.
Yeah.
You got me a little bit gun shy on that one. But that's awesome. I mean, fantastic answer. All right, let's talk about testosterone optimization for men. It's a nice little segue here. We got a lot of guys dealing with low T lately, and even a percentage of them just end up jumping on bioidentical hormones rather than even looking at why their T is low and what's contributing to that. So maybe give us a little bit of your take of what's been driving down testosterone levels in men, and then what we can do about it.
Yeah, for sure. I think like the most obvious factors here is like just a really crappy lifestyle. Like men that are obese, like consuming crap, like highly refined foods, and or like actually like nutrient deficiency. So like both you and I know, like zinc, magnesium, selenium, like all of these nutrients are essential for testicular function. But then the other factor here, Anthony, is like, I think it's actually having their balls too hot. And this is where we can sort of segue into like the icing of the testes, because that practice has now become an absolute internet boom since I posted about how it boosted my testosterone to 988 nanograms per deciliter. Like that's my natural testosterone. I was able to get it that high.
That's great. You fertile bastard.
So the icing protocol there, like, I mean, it makes sense because if you have the testes that are just 2 degrees too warm, it completely arrests spermatogenesis. So you cannot actually make sperm when your testes are too warm. So think about it: driving in a car, sitting at a desk, having a laptop on your lap, and then you got the EMF stuff as well. Yeah, I think like so many guys report benefits from icing their balls, and it's just like literally a free thing they can do 3 times a day, 10 minutes a day. I like to do it just before the gym, always before the gym, and then always one session before bed as well.
Nice. I remember years ago when I was in Florida, I don't think it was you, but someone sent me like an ice pack that looked like a cup for icing the balls. I don't think that was you, but I used it for a little bit, and then it's somewhere in my biohacks, but it's still like packed up from Florida stuff. So that's something that I haven't been consistent with. But I did do it when I was down there a bit. Do you just use a regular old like ice pack?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one that you would have got sent would have been from Joel Green, called the Jetpack.
I think so. That sounds right.
That one there. I use that one. I like that one. It's just the perfect shape. So, you flip your penis back facing towards you, and then just apply the ice pack to your testes. And so just let it sit there. It's just got the perfect, it's not one of those ice packs that's like too firm. You don't want to use a block because the block is just, it's so hard to apply. But this one here is like just perfectly molded for your balls.
Is it like jetpack.com or something like that? Yeah.
It is.
Jetpack.com. All right. Maybe I'll just pick up another one of those so I don't have to go digging in boxes to find my testicular ice pack. You know what's interesting? I mean, there's this huge movement now of people too that are sunning their balls. A lot of guys. I mean, I talked to a guy yesterday that's like, "Oh, I sun my balls every day. Like, don't miss it." He's like, "Do you?" And I'm like, "When appropriate." But there's a lot of times where like you can't have your legs up in the air, you know what I mean, unless there's some degree of privacy. And what we also know is that cold can temporarily increase the absorption of sunlight by the mitochondria and the production of ATP. Do you ever stack ice in your balls with sunning your balls?
I actually do, but I don't do it as intensely as what everyone else does. I actually do, like when I can, just like you, when there's sun exposure between like 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., I'll do like literally just 2 to 3 seconds of exposure. I'm not doing like a full like 5 minutes or even longer. I actually think there's deleterious effects from doing it too long because
heating up your balls.
Exactly. Like how do people not understand that? Like you're heating up the balls with the most powerful source of heat.
Just hold the magnifying glass with your legs behind your head.
Why isn't this working?
Yeah.
Doesn't magnifying my doesn't burning my butt? How is this not working? Why is my testosterone dropped?
You just burn the hair off your balls. It's like nature's nair. All right, cool. So just a few seconds you'll do it, and then that's to like get a little bit of that photonic energy there, but also not to raise the temperature of your boys.
Yep, and also to prevent actual skin sun damage to like I don't know much about the skin physiology like around the testes, because I know we have different types of skin,
right? Based on like where your ancestors are from and everything.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, actually, are the testes, that skin around there, is that more sensitive to sun damage?
It's got to be, right? If it, I mean, it like never sees the sun. How could it not be? You know?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. So testosterone, keep your balls cool. You ice 3 times a day, a lot of days for like 10 minutes, pre-workout, pre-bed, and then some other time. And what else is that? I mean, do you credit that for most of your testosterone optimization benefits that you've been able to experience? Because a lot of guys would be like, man, I would die to have, 800, 1,000 testosterone and not have to inject myself with PEDs.
Well, I do think that was a big culprit, but then I put together and this is what I also cover in like the testosterone course. Like I break down exactly what I did from a nutrition, supplementation, lifestyle, icing, all of that stuff. But I'll share some of them now. Like I think from the nutrition standpoint, I was not holding back in terms of my carbohydrate intake. So I wasn't restrictive at all. A lot of guys think you have to cut carbs completely. That's false. Like I was consuming plenty of berries, plenty of fruit, honey, maple syrup, oats, sourdough bread, things like that.
A lot of times my sex drive and libido and at least what I would feel like testosterone, I feel like that goes down if I'm too strict with carbs, especially if I'm working out.
Oh, I'm the exact same. And that's there's many mechanisms there. It could be like the increase in cortisol that you get from a low carb diet. It could be like it raising prolactin because you're actually stressed, and like carbohydrates might help to suppress that prolactin. And then also the SHBG. We know that carbohydrates can decrease SHBG, freeing up more testosterone. But yeah, it's from the nutrition side, like macadamia nuts. I was having heaps of organ meats, so like chicken hearts. I was having a lot of those. They're rich in zinc, coenzyme Q10. They're so high in cholesterol. Eggs. I was consuming like tiger nuts as well, like Brazil nuts.
Tiger nuts are the same thing as Brazil nuts?
No, tiger nuts, it's not actually a nut. It's what is it? It's not a nut. It's from a different family. But if you look up like tiger nuts, testosterone, male rats, you'll see this. There's a few studies that are really impressive. But then so the protein side of things, I pretty much capped it at about 1.8 to 2 grams of protein, 2 grams per kilogram of protein per day. That was again from definitely not vegan sources of protein.
Yeah, for sure. All right, this is great. So macadamia nuts, chicken hearts, eggs, tiger nuts, which I've never eaten or heard of, to be honest. Brazil nuts, you capture protein at 1.8 to 2 grams per kilogram per day. And that kind of along with some of the other things that you've got in that course. So guys, if you want to pick up the nootropics masterclass, testosterone masterclass, go to ergogenic.health, ERGOGENIC.health, enter discount code biohacks. And again, I'll have links to these in the show notes. And then let's kind of bring this plane home. You had another thing that for us to discuss, which I'm going to butcher, but it was paraxanthine.
Yeah.
Never heard of that either. What's going on with that?
Yeah, paraxanthine. So everyone's heard of caffeine. Yeah. Everyone's heard of, and then a lot of people would hopefully know of theobromine, which is found in chocolate. But then there's the third metabolite, which is paraxanthine. And paraxanthine just got neglected for a number of years. But now, it is going to be, I personally think paraxanthine will be the next caffeine.
Okay.
Because it's much more gentle on the body in terms of not affecting heart rate and blood pressure. There's a number of studies in humans administering paraxanthine as a nootropic to improve various aspects of cognition, tasks like task switching ability, like sustained attention, alertness. I've actually got some right here, and the dosage is 100 milligrams. It's 100 milligrams per capsule. They've used up to I think 400 milligrams per day. And my buddy Sean Wells, he's one of the world's greatest. He's the world's greatest formulator. He's an ingredientologist. He's patented a number of ingredients. He'll be releasing this one fairly soon. So shout out to my man Sean Wells.
Nice. What's his website so we can pick it up when he releases it?
It will be it's SeanWells.com, and also it will be released under N&B Nutrition.
NMB Nutrition?
Double N. So N.
And NB. And NB Nutrition. And the spelling of Sean?
SH.
Okay, awesome. And is paraxanthine something that can be purchased now anywhere else, or we got to wait for Sean to sell it?
Well, I would wait. I mean, it's not. It was supposed to be released fairly soon. I don't know. There's always delays, and I'm sure it's because of the virus. I'm sure that would affect manufacturing, but it will be released fairly soon. So probably by the time, I don't know how long when this podcast will be released, but maybe in the next few months, I'll be doing a really comprehensive like YouTube video. So if people listening in want to go to if they just search Boost Your Biology on YouTube, just go over there, because I got tons of videos on my YouTube channel with all of these cool ingredients. So I'll probably have a video released fairly soon as well.
Sweet. Maybe we'll have Sean on when he releases that and talk about paraxanthine and some other stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can hook you guys up for sure.
Awesome. I mean, this has been fantastic. Lucas, anything else that you feel compelled to share that you're excited to talk about? Obviously, I think guys, if you got value from this, share up this episode and go to ergogenic.health and enter discount code biohacks to pick up those courses that Lucas has put together on nootropics and testosterone. If you really want to go deep on this stuff, deeper. Yeah. Anything else that you'd like to share over here?
No, I mean, I'm just, super grateful that we reconnected. And for those listening in, I guess the biggest takeaway is try and build a level of self-awareness when it comes to experimentation. I think the biggest weapon or the biggest, tool you can have in your toolkit is actually having that extreme level of self-awareness, so that when you're undergoing these experiments, you can truly see which ones are helping you or serving you, and then which ones are not. And you literally just ditch the ones that are not and just keep the ones that are. It's a very pragmatic approach. So
100%. 100%. I couldn't agree more. Intelligent experimentation with asymmetric risk, high potential upside, low or no potential downside. And then bring the awareness to be able to notice those cause and effect relationships and what's beneficial for you. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Lucas, thank you so much for coming on, brother. This has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. You're on Instagram at Ergogenic Health, on YouTube, Boost Your Biology. Ergogenic.health is the website where you guys can go to get those courses. I've mentioned discount code biohacks. And thank you, brother. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep spreading the good word and helping to empower men and women in this area. You're doing great work.
Thanks, man. I'm looking forward to getting you on my podcast as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got to schedule that. We'll get that booked. All right, brother. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. Cheers.